mind and cognitive. This is something that I thought about many a times when I was a young lad, and I thought that it was a sickening display as well. And I also thought that that don't make no damn sense. Well, if Jesus took on all the sin, then that would make him a sinner, not to mention a sadomasochist. I'm sorry, got carried away. Thank you. No, sir, no, sir, no, sir. This was a thought of mine when I was but a young one. And then as I've grown and studied other things, I have come to understand this thought process even more, to recognize that this Jesus character was not God, could not have ever been God, and that the God to which they speak of is not God. You see, in a church, the way that they would explain this is they would say that Jesus took on the sins of man, and during that time frame, he was separated from God because God cannot be where there is sin. He dwelled in the grave for 3 days, and then upon over conquering and conquering sin, he rose back into his prominence and reunited with God, and then became God once more. Now, because they believe in blood sacrifice and animal sacrifice, Jesus was the lamb. He was called the lamb, but we know that it is human sacrifice to which you are able to gain your salvation. That he died by taking on your sins, and now you can go into heaven, and whatever sins you have unresolved, you can now have them released from you by Jesus. But we know that that is not how Christian doctrine teaches that now, do we? So let's take this step by step. The first part of the step is people not the Christians themselves do not even actually understand the purpose of Jesus and how it works. That this story has been rent from the story of Horus and Osiris as you go and look to seek to fulfill your commitment of the Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And as your heart is measured by the weight of a feather compared, that your heart invariably will be heavier than a feather. Because even in your 42 confessions of Mayat, there will be still something lingering at the moment of your death. So then Horus appears. And Horus takes on your sins in the same way that Jesus is supposed to take on your sin, but only at the end when you face judgment, in the same way with Horus. But doctrine today has made it that Jesus is constantly taking on your sin as you speak. But even in this biblical story, it is based on the Egyptian story of taking on your sin at the moment of death when you are to be judged. And then when Horus takes it on, Anubis and the elders counsel over your situation and then decide whether or not you will enter into heaven, the field of reeds, or the pearly gates, if you would have it, or if Sobek will consume your heart and then you will just cease to exist and go into an Egyptian style hell. But of course, they didn't have in hell, you just cease to exist. But in this version, because the Greeks had Hades, you go into hell. Now, as far as this Jesus character taking on your sins and for momentarily being without the presence of God, asking God, why have thou forsaken me? Or did he say it is finished? Or did he say they know not what they do? You have different variations determined based on which versions of the book that you're actually reading. But let's go with the why have thou forsaken me? Asking if this cup can be passed from him just mere days before. What this demonstrates is that Jesus cannot be God at any moment or any time, nor can this God ever not be him. This God could be God himself. You see, a true God can never not know is not God. A true God can never be added to nor subtracted from. But in this case, we see this doctrine says that the Jesus character must have subtracted from this God if God was able to forsake this Jesus character and leave him alone on the cross. But then this God must be added to, because once Jesus comes out of the grave, he then is reacclimated with this God. That means God can be added to. But for a God to be a God, the all God, the true God, the one and only God, then he can neither be added to nor taken away from, but must always be 100% within itself. The moment you take away from it by saying that it is three persons, it is no longer God. The moment you add to it by saying that Jesus came back and regained his Godhead, he cannot be God. And at no point can a being not know that it is not God. So therefore, the moment that Jesus was born, Jesus would have known that he is God. But we see in this story that this is not what's known. And as far as the sadomasochist part, I'm not even going to go there. Maybe suggesting that he was having a good time up there on that cross and being whipped, but I'm not going to put that on anyone. I'm going to leave that one alone to your own imaginations. So you have a great day, and I appreciate your commentary. And always remember that you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.